Well, hello and welcome. This is Gilda Vanderheyden with the Nonprofit Path. And today is the first in our series of interviews on the subject of work-life balance. And I have with me a wonderful guest, Rob Houghton, who is the founder and executive recruiter of MRI Consultants in Fairfax, Virginia, in the DC metro area. And Rob and I have actually been good friends for several years now. And he is always someone I look up to and really seems to have it all together. And so, Rob, if you don't mind just sharing with our guests a little bit more about your background and what you're doing these days.
Sure. I grew up in upstate New York, Albany, New York. Have a couple of brothers. Really, my childhood was all about competitive sports. Played football, basketball, baseball. Went to college on a basketball scholarship. Took my studies very seriously while at university. Graduated from college, moved to Houston, Texas. Got my first job. Met my lovely wife. Everything was on track. Was the youngest person ever to attain senior accountant with Arthur Anderson, which is now Accenture. That was back in the early 1980s. Worked in international consulting. So have always been a businessman. 2003 started up my executive search business, Management Recruiters of Fairfax, specialized in insurance. Along the way, I've also done extensive work in the coaching and leadership training of U.S. Special Forces and other American Special Operation Forces around the world, really focused mostly on organizational and leadership. So I've got a good mixture of military, special operations, and business experience. So my recruiting business is what I do most of the time. It's my main area of focus, and we recruit only in the Washington, D.C. area. We're the largest executive search firm that specializes in just insurance brokerage. That's employee benefits, commercial lines, and personal lines. I represent 12 of the top 20 Washington, D.C. Brokers, most of which are national insurance brokers that have global operations. So that's it in a nutshell. Most of my time is spent as president and CEO of Management Recruiters of Fairfax. And I've also gotten into coaching. I'm a licensed international executive coach, career coach, and life coach. Really enjoy the coaching aspect. So I'm able to blend that along with my recruiting business, and very active on social media. I'm doing podcasts. I have a YouTube channel. We can talk about more about that later, but yeah.
You're a busy guy, for sure.
I'm a busy guy, and I've been happily married for 40 years. And
that's awesome.
With 3 grown sons. So very happy.
That is awesome. And every time I talk to you, Rob, like I said, you always seem to have it all together. And, usually what comes to mind is you're always putting your clients first. And I know, just recently us chatting a little bit about coaching before we started the official call was that, now clients are actually saying to Rob how they enjoy having him as a go-to sounding board and being able to coach with him, that it's making his recruiting business even stickier, that they're not going to want to go anywhere else. So I love that, Rob, that you're kind of integrating the two together. So yeah. Tell me, in general, I know there are a lot of folks that don't even believe in the concept of work-life balance. I just use the term because work-life integration, work-life harmony, it's all the same kind of thing. But I think balance seems to sum it up pretty well. So do you even believe it's possible in general, and what it means to you?
Of course, yeah. So work-life balance to me, what my theory of mind, if you will, on work-life balance is, I had to figure out, who am I And what do I want to do? First of all, it's kind of like walking down the road and seeing this castle way off in the distance. And once you have that destination in mind, then you really adapt yourself to following that calling. It's like a calling from the forest. And once you tap into that, work-life balance really blends into one. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like in my life, like a typical day, I fully integrate what I do at work, which is my recruiting business, into what I do in life, which is hanging out with my wife, going shooting, archery, working out, bicycling, walking, exercising, reading books, artwork. I do all that during the course of a normal day. I
Yeah.
think it's a mistake for people to try and do, okay, from 8 to 5, I'm going to work. And then
Right.
from 5 to 8, I'm going to have a life.
Yeah.
Very difficult to do that. I think the trick is to integrate the two. And the only way you can do that is that if you really and truly have found your calling, if you really and truly enjoy and love what you do, then work-life balance, that whole issue becomes irrelevant, really.
Okay. No, I love that. And I mean, I guess for our listeners, Rob, can you give us maybe an example of how you do that? Like, how do you integrate? So like, say
Sure.
you found your calling. Okay, great. For you, it's recruiting. How do you do the time with the wife, the archery, your
Sure.
recruiting? How do you put it all together?
All right. So if you're an entrepreneur, that, that becomes self-evident. So an
Mm.
entrepreneur, you're in control of your calendar. But I'll try and speak to the average person out there that has a job, right? So
Yeah.
this is where working remotely really comes into play. I believe that working remotely is here to stay. The genie's out of the bottle, and I think it's really going to help out people with this whole notion of work-life balance. So you have to work in what I describe as blocks of time. So, for instance, I'll use myself as an example. So I get up in the morning, 8 o'clock. I'll immediately walk. I'll walk about 40 minutes. Then when I come back to the house, I meditate for about 20. And then I start work. I'm fresh. I'm alive. I am like ready to go. And I'll put everything I can into accomplishing three work objectives in that day, which I determined the previous night. So I would
Okay.
never, I would never arrive at my desk and have to figure out what am I going to do today. No, that's already been decided the
Hmm.
previous day. That's the last thing I do before I leave my remote office. Okay. I decide what are the three things for the next day. So then I start tackling these three things. I work in 45-minute blocks of time. I'll go fast and furious. It may be an email block where I just check all my emails for 45 minutes, or it may be a Zoom call with somebody, but I work in like these 45 to 50-minute blocks. Then I take a break. I'll get up and go read a book,
Okay.
for 30 minutes. And then I'll get back to work. And then I'll work for maybe 45 minutes. Sometimes I'll do back-to-back blocks. So at
Mhm.
the most, I'd work like 90 minutes. And then I'd work out. I'd go to a gym
Yeah,
or I'd work out in my house. Work out for 30 minutes or so. That's all you need to work out for.
that's great.
Then I go back to work again. Then I'll go to lunch.
Hmm.
Then I'll come back. I'll work again.
Yeah.
Then I'll take another walk or I'll do some gardening. Then I go back to work. So I'm continually refreshing myself.
I
So
love that.
how do you do that working remotely? I think
Yeah.
what you have to do is you have to work very productively.
Hmm.
When I had my office in Fairfax, I had 9 recruiters. And I told my recruiters one day, I mean, recruiting is a hard job on the phone, dealing with people, you
Yeah.
stressing out, emails. It was a 9 to 5 job. I told them, if you can get everything done, if you can get all your objectives done, that we collectively decide what your we had MBOs, management by objective, and we broke that down into daily activity. How many calls you're going to make, how many emails. I told them, I said, once you achieve all this, you can go home, right?
Hmm.
I don't care if it takes you 3 hours or 12 hours. Here's what's expected, because if you want to make money as a recruiter, you got to make 60 phone calls a day, 25 emails, and do a bunch of other stuff. It was amazing. People were finishing like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they go home. And you know what? We tracked everything.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, you could, everybody made more than they did the previous year. And what they did is they tracked activity. They were able to correlate end results with activity. And once you do that, once you know what the numbers are, then all of it is like, if you know you got to make 60 phone calls and then you go home, well, you know what? You're not sitting around a water cooler bullshit
Right.
people. You're not going on Google. You're not playing poker online. You're not doing fantasy football. You're in there just like doing your work. And I really believe that if you took the normal workday of what's expected of normal people, account managers, account executives in my business, if you work your ass off, uninterrupted, no bullshit, for 4 to 5 hours, you're done.
Yeah.
You're done. And the other thing is if you do work really hard and productively and you're still working 10 hours a day, then you have to do what I call embrace the uncomfortable. And you have to sit down with your boss and say, hey, Mr. Boss Man or Mr. Boss Woman, I just have too much work. We need to hire more people. You need to help me out here because I can no longer do this. I need help. And you have to be able to, of course, document that in your, the most obvious thing is do it during your performance review. But sometimes you have to knock on your boss's door and say, we need to have a frank discussion.
Yeah.
And what you put together a set of metrics, then you hit those metrics. And that's when you can start to work in blocks of time. You have to refresh yourself. Otherwise, you're going to get burned out and you're going to hate your boss. You're going to hate your job, or you're going to hate your kids probably too.
Right. And I guess for Rob, for anybody who's in the normal back to their office, right? And if the expectation is that they have to grind and just work through, is there any advice that you give to them to how can they take those breaks, or if their culture, if the corporate culture doesn't allow for that? And I know the remote part, that's helpful, because then when they are working from home, they do have that flexibility to do that.
My advice would be, my advice to people who have to work in an office 8 to 5 is find another job. Okay. Because people are working remotely now. That's the new. That's not changing. Companies have tried to get people to come back, and people are just not going back. My clients, I have some clients that were steadfastly against working remotely. They got to be in the office, right?
Right.
Here's what happened to them. During COVID, and more importantly, right now, they wanted people to come back to the office, and guess what happened? They started losing all their top talent. People literally started walking out the door. I know, because my clients are now companies that embrace working remotely. My sourcing companies, in other words, the companies that I poach people from, those are mostly companies who have not adopted the working remotely. I'm stealing all their people. I'm literally stealing all their good people now.
Wow.
Walking out the door. So I would say, if you're good at what you do, and that's a supposition here. If you're good at what you do, then you got to go to your boss and have a sit down and say, I really want to work remotely, or at least 2 days a week at home. If they're so unreasonable that they tell you no, I'd look for another job. Seriously, there's no reason why anybody should be working 8 to 5 in an office cubicle now. It just doesn't work anymore.
Right.
And the reason why it doesn't work is because companies are hiring less people and they're expecting more out of them. I challenge one person to call me up after the show and tell me, I got plenty of free time in the office. It's not like that anymore. Anybody that I talk to in the insurance business, at least, I just talked to 3 people this morning, actually. All 3 of them had the same problem, because I asked them, what is your main motivation? All 3 of them said the same thing. I'm being overworked and underpaid now. I'm doing like 2 and 3 times more work than I did 2 or 3 years ago, because they have less people and they want to squeeze profits out of the employees. Everyone wants to make more money. So how do you do it? You start squeezing your employees.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's reality. That's a fact. So I would tell people, if you have to drive an hour to work every day and sit in an office for 8 hours a day,
Yeah, it's not expected anymore.
You
I
got to
mean,
make a change.
yeah.
You got to make a change. And I tell people, don't think of it as yourself anymore, but think of it as your family. You represent your family. A lot of the women I talk with are single moms, right? They are the breadwinner in their family. I
Hmm.
tell them, I said, forget about this loyalty. Forget about this. I owe it to my company. I have to service my clients. Baloney. What about you and your kids? I think of myself as Team Houghton. We're a team. I don't do it for just Rob Houghton. I do it for my wife, Stephanie, and my kids. That's how people should start thinking in the workplace.
Hmm. Yeah,
Your
absolutely.
boss is one thing, but your company really doesn't give a shit about you at the end of the day. They really don't.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I appreciate your being direct about it for
that's
sure. You do
that's the
have to be.
reality.
Oh,
That's the
yeah.
reality. I get people, I'm calling people all the time. Hey, this is Rob Houghton. I'm an executive recruiter. Would you be interested in an insurance account executive job with the top 20? Hey, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to recruiters. You guys, that they hang up on you. I send them a LinkedIn message, go to hell, Rob. I don't want to hear, all this kind of baloney.
Yeah.
What they don't know is that there's only two kinds of people in the world. There's owners and there's temps. You
Mm-hmm.
don't own your business, you're a temp. I don't care if you're making $300,000 a year. You are nothing more than a temporary employee because no matter how safe you think you are in your position or how good you are as that EVP or VP or whatever, you're 2 weeks away from somebody walking in your office and saying, I'm sorry, but we just got acquired. We got restructured. I don't like the way you part your hair.
Right.
I need your keys. Oh, here's your 2 weeks. Here's your 2 weeks notice. Good luck. That happens all the time. Believe me.
Interesting. Interesting. And Rob, when you have folks that are kind of working the hybrid model, both in the office, maybe a few days, and at home remotely, one of the common questions I get is how do they, especially when they're working at home, how do they set certain boundaries in place, especially if they've got kids at home? And I know your kids are grown, but I don't know if for some of your clients, if you've seen different things that work for them in terms of just sort of
Yeah.
setting those boundaries at home.
I mean, like I've got a notice on my door
Yeah.
right now. It says showtime. Anybody in my house, and sometimes my kids will visit, a neighbor will be over here. Stephanie will come down and looking for me. She sees that sign. She knows don't even get close to the door
Okay. Yep.
because I'm busy. I'm on a phone call. I'm doing a Zoom. So I think you have to communicate the boundaries to everyone in your family. You know, I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of dog lovers out there and cat lovers and all this stuff, but I think the expectation should be set. Hey, from 9 o'clock to 9:45, that's my work block.
Hmm.
If you really, I mean, if somebody's dying, then knock on the door. But otherwise, I'm busy until 9:45.
Right.
I've got a schedule set, and I know people that actually put the schedule on their door and they close the door so everyone in their family can see their schedule.
Yeah.
9:45 to 10 o'clock, I'm free. It's just like an office.
Yeah.
You have to treat your home office just like you would a corporate office. I've seen the winners and the losers from working remotely. The winners are the people, and I know a lot of this you can't change, right? But the
Hmm.
winners are the people that mostly their kids are in school.
Hmm.
They have a standalone room, whether it's a room in the basement or an extra bedroom that they can close a physical door to.
Yeah.
And they're very good at communicating to the other family members, even if there's other people in the house.
Hmm.
Got to do that. You've got to take it. You got to take responsibility. You have to what I call extremely own it. I don't know if you
Yeah.
book back there.
Yeah.
Extreme ownership. You have to own what you do. So you have to take responsibility. It's not the cat's fault. It's not the dog's fault. It's not your husband's fault. It's not your kid's fault. If you can't get your work done, it's your fault. So you have to come up with a system. And that's the way I do it with me is I communicate out.
Yeah.
I told Stephanie, hey, I'm on this call for probably the next hour or so.
Hmm.
So I turn my phone off, got my door closed.
Yeah.
It's just going to be you and me for an hour. You have to handle your business like that.
Yeah. And you're talking about not just family members, but are also colleagues or even even clients, because otherwise, how are you going to have that uninterrupted time? Because what I find is some of the clients that I work with, all right, they might block off the time, and maybe it's for personal things that are, we've got the sign up, etc. But when it comes to, oh, a colleague needs help, they're dropping everything. And I find that rule really has to apply to everybody, because that's your sacred time to get your stuff done. Otherwise, you're going to get pulled into so many different things, and it's just the nature of the beast that then you're going to be there a lot later, and then your personal life will suffer.
You have to have the discipline to stick to a schedule. Like, I check my emails first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
That's my first block.
Okay.
And it's one of my last blocks for 15 minutes. And I'll only spend 15, 20 minutes on emails. I have an email rule. It's 3 sentences. That's it.
Oh.
You only get 3 sentences. Yeah.
Okay. I like that.
Everybody gets 3 sentences.
Meaning your reply back to the email?
I reply to anybody, clients, candidates, anybody.
Love it.
It's a 3 sentence rule. I don't have time to sit down and write 2 or 3 paragraphs, because most people don't have the patience to actually read it.
That's true.
And I'll do things in bullet points. I do things in 3s, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It will usually be like, talk to candidate after interview.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do bullets, 1, 2, 3. That's it. A sentence each.
Okay. And then, Rob, what would be some key mindsets that you think really make the difference for you to help you stay balanced?
My mindset is, I know what the most important 3 things I have to do for any given day.
Okay.
So my mindset is focus, focus, focus. Those 3 things. And a lot of times, each block of time will be one of those focus points. And you know what? Even my clients, if a client calls or email me, typically it gets pushed to the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing: if every time a client calls me and I pick up the phone, the message I'm sending is, I'm not a very busy guy, because every time you call, I'm picking up the phone on the first ring. You know what I'm saying? So they have to wait like everyone else.
Yeah.
I always call people back. Anybody that emails or calls me gets a response back within 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that, because see, especially with some of the nonprofit clients that I'm working with, Rob, now, the mindset is, I have to be on call, I have to respond, and I have to respond now. So just hearing you say that, having sort of whoever it is that's reaching out to you know that when they do reach out, yes, they're going to get a response. They're going to get a response within 24 hours. But hey, Rob's got his priorities. He's working on maybe things specifically for that client.
Yeah.
So I love that. And it's a very interesting, and that's something that I'm finding needs some change and some coaching sometimes, for sure. Any other mindsets are so valuable?
I'm sorry, Gil. I talked over you. What was that again?
No, I said any other mindsets, because those are super valuable, and I feel like you probably have at least 3 in there.
I think the other mindset is, whether it's a client, a personal relationship issue, anything, I always try and think of the end game. What is the objective? Okay, what do I want to accomplish? And then my mindset layered on top of that is, it's a journey. It's not all about that destination. So as long as I handle my business in an ethical and a virtuous manner, as long as I do things with courage, wisdom, patience, then I know it's going to work out. So my mindset is, I don't necessarily have to be the best of the best to get to the best room in the best castle at the end of the road. It's just got to be a fun trip. It's got to be informative, inspiring, and entertaining. As long as that journey is those 3 things, again, there's the 3 things: informative, inspiring, and entertaining. It's going to be a great ride. It's going to be a great trip. And I try and treat everything in my life like that. That's my mindset. That's because if you put together a few blocks of time like that, then next thing you know, at the end of the day, you're thinking, wow, that was a hell of a good day. And then you're sitting there on Friday thinking, that was a great week. And then it's a great month. And then it's a great year. And next thing you know, it's a great lifetime. So my mindset is it's all about the journey and how you conduct yourself. And I try and be the best that I can be, not focused on this best of the best kind of Hollywood bull crap, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, and Rob, is there any kind of process you used in addition to what's the end game? What do you want to accomplish? And that's a great frame to kind of figure out what those three priorities are. But I'll tell you, I've got clients that feel like they've got 20, 100, more than 100 things, and it's really challenging for them to find what their main priorities are. So is there any system or way you determine what are your three things?
If it ain't a hell yeah, it's a no. Okay.
Yeah.
If it ain't a hell yeah, it's a no. So I guess what I'm saying there is sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes you have to say, okay, I've got 20 things, but I'm going to do these 3 or 4 really, really well. And if you have a boss or a client that expects you to do 20 things while only 3 or 4 are realistic, you have to tell your client no too. Or you have to charge them more money maybe. Or, I mean, you have to hire more people maybe or something, you know what I mean? But you have to maintain the quality of the relationship. And sometimes you have to embrace the uncomfortable. You have to have that difficult conversation with whoever it is that's really stretching you beyond a realistic goal or a realistic time frame.
Yeah, and as you pointed out at the beginning of our talk today, that knowing what you want to do, what lights you up, is so crucial to how your life, where you're structuring your life and how you're choosing what those priorities are. And so another thing is just not only that, but what your values are as well as your ambitions. I think that's another way to help determine where your priorities are.
Well, I think another way to look at it too, the way I approach it, and this is just my approach, that's all, but I'm always trying to get to know Rob Houghton. Like, who is this guy, Rob Houghton? Now, there's other people out there like you, and I have friends in the military, friends in the recruiting business, friends from high school, college. They all have a perception of me, but nobody really knows the entire holistic Rob Houghton, right? The only person that could ever hope to understand that is me. So I spend a lot of time reading philosophy. I read great fiction. I read history. I do a lot of meditation. I spend a lot of time alone. I try and do thoughtful things. Like this is why I walk in the morning, because my focus is much more internally focused now than it used to be. I used to be externally focused. And sometimes when you're doing social media, you have to be externally focused. How do I look? How do I come across? So there's a dichotomy there. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you know yourself and you know your wants and needs, and you really, really know what makes you tick, makes you happy, what you're good at, what you're not good at, it makes life a whole lot easier. Then it becomes very, very easy because you can just relax and be yourself. And all the stress just kind of melts away.
I really like that. I mean, I usually advise clients to make sure that they give themselves, whether it's creative time or thinking time, because if you're constantly responding to everything, you kind of lose yourself.
Right.
And, and then burn out real easily, like you mentioned. So that's a really good point. And I almost feel like that's kind of like one of the questions I had for you prior to the call was, is there anything that you learned earlier in regards to the topic that you wish you had implemented sooner? I don't know if what you just mentioned kind of falls into that, but is there anything else in that just like you said, you used to focus externally, now it's more internally. Would that sum it up, or is there anything else on that front that you'd say, hey, you wish you'd done something a little bit differently or earlier on in regards to work-life balance?
Yeah, well, I mean, the great philosophers talk about the seasons of life, so you really have to, everyone's different.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, I'm a man of wisdom. I know how to do this, and the other thing. And it took me like 40 years to figure all this out. I think my message to young people would be is focus on yourself a lot more than the external world, in a world of social media and, peer pressure and bullying and all this kind of stuff. There just seems to be like so much pressure on young people now to be somebody that they may not want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, and how do you do that? Well, you've got to take care of yourself. Things like meditation is really, really good. Things like journaling, spending 10, 15 minutes a day writing down your thoughts, reading good books. People ask me all the time, hey, Rob, what kind of book are you reading now? So I read 3 different genres. I read great fiction, like Tolstoy, Hemingway, because great fiction is informative. It's a theory of mind. You can learn a lot about yourself by learning what other people do in similar situations, which is why the great books are great books, because they're filled with drama, personal interactions, sorrows, the great joys, and you see through the eyes of someone else or through the written word of these great writers like Shakespeare and Tolstoy and Hemingway. Like you see these dramas of how people react in different situations and the consequences. Like having an affair, maybe, you know what I mean?
Right.
You see like what the like Anna Karenina, she has an affair with this guy, and at the end of the book, she jumps in front of a train and kills herself. You know what I mean? So I'll guarantee you, if you're thinking about having an affair, read Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, and you probably won't. So that's why reading great fiction is informative, because it helps you organize your own life. History, you can't argue with history. History is about things that people have done in real life. Again, you see the ramifications of good decisions and bad decisions that people have made that have affected history. And then I read a lot of philosophy too, because philosophy is really instructions on how to live your life.
And do you find, Rob, that those 3 genres that you're reading, they then influence the decisions that you're making in your life?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
That's
I'm reading a French philosopher now, Signor Michel du Montaigne. He was a 16th century French philosopher. And he's probably one of the best. He was the one that came up with the first essay. So when you hear somebody write me an essay, he actually came up with the format, the literary format of the essay.
Wow.
And he was very philosophical. He retired at the age of 38 as a French nobleman, and literally built a castle and lived there for the rest of his life, secluded, reading all the great books and interpreting all this stuff. And based upon his works is where Shakespeare got a lot of his ideas for his plays, all of his tragedies and things,
Wait, repeat his name again? I want to write that down.
Michel du Montaigne. It's Michel space DE space Montaigne. Michel du Montaigne.
Okay, cool. No,
he has a book called Essays.
Essays. Okay.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. So that's how I sort of put my life in order. I'm trying to think, maybe I should listen and read to the greats, because these people are obviously like very successful.
Right.
Maybe I can learn a few things from these people,
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that. I may have to check that out, because I tend to read more self-help, like how to do this, how to do that. But I like that because it gives you a completely different perspective.
You have to learn how to live. You have to learn. You have to learn how to. I mean, you have to be virtuous too. You have to. You have to learn what virtue is. Like, what is virtue? I mean, a lot of people don't even know what the word means. I mean, I think the problem in today's world is people have adopted more of a Machiavellian dog eat dog politics and bureaucracy, how to work that, as opposed to just being a truly virtuous, good person, like the four great virtues, you know, wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage. Those are the four. I mean, everything in life can be boiled down to that. If you have those four qualities, you're a really good person who's probably going to do really good things. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember reading that Benjamin Franklin would take this list of qualities that he wanted to work on and improve in his own life. And I think there were at least a dozen of them. And he'd work on one, have a tracking list, and maybe work on one per week or per month. And then over time, he became a completely different person. So really like that.
Washington had the same thing.
Yeah. But I guess, Rob, I'm going to have folks that are going to say, well, that's cool that he reads and he journals and, he's got his own business. But some people are just so stuck in the grind that they're like, how are you finding time to do that? So what would your advice be to those guys?
I think you have to work more productively. You have to get more done in less time so that time that you recapture, so to speak, you can spend on things that really excite you.
Okay.
That's part of coaching. I mean,
yeah.
If there's somebody out there that really doesn't know, a lot of times you don't know how to find that one thing. It's like there was a movie, it was a cowboy movie where these guys were going on this cowboy trail, and the old guy who was the leader is riding his horse, and there was a young guy there, and the young guy said, "Hey, old man, like, what's the secret to life anyways? I mean, what is the secret?" And the guy just looks at him and points. One. And the guy says, "Oh, what do you mean, one?" He goes, "It's the one thing." And the young guy says, "The one thing? Well, what's the one thing?" Almost falling out of his horse. "What's the one thing?" And the guy looks at him and says, "That's what you got to figure out." So you got to figure out, everybody individually, because we're all human beings, what is the one thing that's your secret? Now, how do you get there? This is where coaching comes in, because you have to go on a journey of self-discovery to discover yourself. It just doesn't, you don't wake up in the morning and, oh, okay, I want to be an astronaut, or I think I want to be a painter, or an insurance sales guy. It's a lot of work, actually. And, I mean, how do you get there? First of all, you should get a coach, because what a coach is different than an instructor, than a consultant, an advisor, a teacher. Coaching is a separate way of doing things. And what you do in coaching, and this because you're a licensed coach too, but for those people out there that don't know what a coach does, it's a coach will take somebody, will facilitate someone that needs help on their own journey of self-discovery, so that they can get to a position of empowerment and enablement, so that they can figure out deep down within them, what is that thing? What is the solution? It's in there. You just got to get it out. And I mean, a lot of it is, walking on the beach in the morning, or taking a long walk, or, having thoughtful conversations with somebody that you trust, reading books, experiencing things. I think the issue with people that they don't know what they want to do is because they have things over experience. They have it backwards. In other words, people buying more video games, more televisions, more electronics, more Apple Watches, more Apple iPhones, more furniture in their house, bigger cars. They burden themselves with things. They should be spending time, energy, and resources on experiences, because experiences are usually cheaper, and experiences is what gives you the wisdom to make the right decision. You can't have wisdom if you don't have experiences. You can't get wisdom from a box or a piece of furniture or a car. There's no life to it. You know what I mean? There's no informative nature to that. Experiences, traveling, getting out, mingling with more people, having more friends, socializing. But experiences like traveling to Europe, taking a cruise, mountain climbing, horseback riding, archery, shooting, whatever it is, get as many experiences as you can, because then your mind will be nourished like you would plant seed in a garden.
Yeah.
You have to plant the seeds first, before the vegetables grow. And maybe you might have to plant 50 different kinds of seeds to figure out what kind of vegetables you like better. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with how do you find the calling? It's work. You got to put the effort into it. It's not like getting up in the morning, getting in your car, driving to work, and then driving home, cooking dinner, watching a few TV shows, and going to bed. You're never going to get anywhere doing that. And you have to make tough decisions. Maybe you have to quit your job, maybe, or maybe you have to take a lesser job for less money to do something you really want to do. And maybe instead of driving that brand new BMW, you're driving a 12-year-old Honda Civic, or instead of living in a 4,000 square foot house, you're living in a 2,000 square foot house. I mean, these are all decisions that you have to make. It's not easy, but sometimes you need freedom of time to make good decisions.
Absolutely.
What you're talking about is a desperate situation. You have somebody that's, I hate to say this, but there's a lot of people out there like that. They've gotten themselves into a bind where they're up to their neck in credit, up to their neck in bills. They have to have that job. They have to be there 8 hours a day. They have to drive 90 minutes into Fairfax. They're in this unending circle. And what happens is, the first thing that typically happens is their family disintegrates. They get divorced. There's too much stress on friends and family. The next thing you know, they find themselves a single parent or a single person living in a 1-bedroom apartment with 2 kids. That's a difficult situation.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, get out of that. I mean,
yeah, it's unsustainable. Yeah, it's completely unsustainable. Yeah,
I hate to say it, but it's not a. There's some situations that are just very, very, very difficult. But I mean, for those people out there saying, "Well, that's me," well, and maybe they're whining about it or complaining about it. But my thing is, you should have, well, life is it's a series of making the right decisions.
And learning from the ones that don't work, right? Just taking the lesson and learning from it and moving forward, for sure. And like you said earlier, Rob, I think, starting with what people want is sort of the first thing. And then, as you mentioned, just emphasizing those life experiences is so critical, because at the end of the day, not just that, but the end of your life, and you're on your deathbed, people are treasuring those experiences, those memories. It's really creating that mosaic of their life, and you're not going to remember the grind, the day-to-day. And like you're mentioning, maybe there are some folks that are in that pickle of, they got a mortgage to support, their kids are in private schools. I mean, I know a lot of folks in the area that, in our area, that are like that. And it's like they have to do that. And it is not sustainable. And like you mentioned, one of the first things to go can be relationships, for sure. And, I think it's a matter of kind of going back to the drawing board and starting with giving yourself that time to reflect, to journal, to really figure out, where am I in life? Take a half a day or a whole day off. This is your life you're talking about. And like Rob mentioned, he and I are both coaches. Highly encourage people to use a coach as a resource, because it gives you a completely new perspective and view that you because you're in your own world, kind of like the prescription bottle. And if you're sort of on the inside of the bottle and you're looking on from the inside out, you see the label, but you can't see what's written on the outside. But only a coach or someone who, even close friends, great, they're great to bounce things off of, but they can't give you the same perspective. You don't know how many clients I've told me, wow, I had a close friend, or I have my mom I talked to, but no one's ever told me that, because a coach is designed and hired to serve your highest interest. So if something isn't working and, they're going to call you out on it, it might not be easy or fun, but that's what's going to get you to where you want to be. Yeah. So I think that's really, really important. So thank you for pointing that out, Rob. And then I think, if it's okay with you, I wanted to just ask one last question, and then I think we have time for a quick lightning round, if you're up for it.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, cool. So the last question before we go into lightning round is, Are there anything else coming to mind, whether it's resources, tools, mindset that have made a big difference for you
Yeah.
on work-life balance? And again, you covered a lot, so
Well,
I don't expect anything more, but
so
anything else to add?
one thing my dad used to tell me as a kid that I still remember to this day, which I think helped me a lot, was you show me who your friends are, and I'll show you who you are.
Hmm.
And I I was over I was in a foreign country. I was in Abu Dhabi actually about 6 months ago, and somebody else was having a meeting with me, and they said, Rob, a person is the average of the five closest friends or family that they hang out with. And what that really, and he was saying the same thing that my dad told me, and that is, you have to be really careful. I mean, really, really careful
Mm-hmm.
who you hang out with, who your friends are. If you want to be a special person, hang out with special people. If you want to be a druggie, a pot smoking, you know, guy sitting or gal sitting on a couch watching reruns of reality TV shows all day long, collecting unemployment or whatever these people do, then hang out with five people that are actually doing that, and you will probably become that.
Yes.
So, like professionally, since we're talking about
Yeah.
profession, you're in an office, right? Let's say you're an account manager making $75,000 a year, right? The relationships that you want to nurture are people that are smarter than you, quicker than you, more educated than you,
Hmm.
more fluent than you, more well-read than you.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
want to be hanging out with those people. You don't necessarily have to be, kissing up to the CEO, but if you're making, if you're a mid-market manager, then hang out with like the VP,
Right.
or,
Right.
hang out with people that are better than you, because you will eventually become them. So
Beautiful.
that's one thing that somebody can do. And along those same lines, I'll just add one more thing. So one of
Yeah.
the things I do is I have an informal board of directors, a board of advisors. So I have five other friends.
Mm-hmm.
What we do once a year, we'll pick a place and we'll just head out for a long weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And what we do, we analyze and constructively criticize each other. We look
Okay.
at our businesses.
Yeah.
We talk about the financial markets, to personal investing. We talk about our families, our kids, relationships. And over the, 3 nights and 4 days, it's an invaluable experience because we get a chance to really reflect on what we're doing. I mean, am I really doing the right thing? And like,
Right.
I came away from that experience. We went to Saratoga 3 weekends ago. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I got my idea to launch this new reality show that I'm
Oh,
going to be releasing on YouTube in November. So that's
okay.
just, and then we made a bunch of other decisions that were because I had this close knit group of trusted
Yes.
associates or friends, kind of hybrid friends, professional colleagues, and that's the way I move forward. Is I always consider myself to be the dumbest guy in the room, and I'm looking for those five people that are a lot smarter than me, and I hang out with them. I build relationships with them.
Yeah. So you essentially created your own mastermind. That's awesome. Really,
Is that
really.
what I did? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
Very
And we
cool.
had a lot of fun. So I would encourage people, no
Yeah.
matter who you are, go on a fishing trip for a couple of days, go on a girls' trip for a weekend,
Right.
but just don't go with a bunch of partiers just to have
Right.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
love
like, put some thought into it and
that.
try and develop your own little, I call it a little tribe.
Yeah.
Everyone should have like a tribe for your personal
Yeah.
investments, have a tribe for your medical stuff, a tribe for your business activities. Develop these little tribes so that you have access to all these trusted advisors.
Yeah.
That's how you raise your level of play.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So I guess, Rob, we're just going to wrap up with a quick sort of lightning round. So I'm just going to ask you a question. The idea is to kind of answer in a couple sentences or less for this part of it.
Three
So are
sentences.
you ready?
So this is totally unprepared. You're just going to ask me a question. Okay, good. Okay, this
Oh,
will
no,
be
no, no,
fun.
no, no, no. It's okay. It was on the other the other thing, but it's okay if you feel
Let's
comfortable. If
go.
not, no big deal. Are you
I,
up for it?
I think this is better. Go
All
ahead.
right. Okay, so what would your top book recommendation be at the present moment?
Um, I would say Anna Karenina
Okay, awesome.
by
You got
Tolstoy.
this. You got this.
Tolstoy.
And then your most admired person and why?
Yeah, I'll give you a contemporary person and I'll give you a historical person. So one of the guys that I really like is Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
That guy is a winner, and he's 45 years old, still playing football. He has a great sense of who he is. I love his workout program, his health and fitness program, and he extremely owns what he does. He's always working.
Okay.
He has a family. I know he's having trouble now with his wife Gazella, but
Mhm.
I've always admired that guy because here's a guy that graduated from college and he was a nobody, and then he just developed a workout program and worked very smartly to become arguably the greatest quarterback ever. So Tom Brady.
Okay. Was there a second one you wanted to use historical or no?
Yeah, historical. I've always liked Hemingway. I've always really
Um,
admired him because Hemingway was a very productive writer. He was dedicated to his craft. That was his calling. He always wanted to be a writer, and he worked hard at it. He woke up at 6 o'clock every morning, worked his ass off writing every day until noontime, and then he was done. He
nice.
literally closed the book. So I
Okay.
learned a lot about Hemingway, about
Yeah,
how to live life, how to
interesting.
work, how to work productively. I mean, Hemingway was just an
Okay.
amazing guy.
Awesome. All right. And then the last lightning round question, advice you would give your younger self.
To speak up more. Um, when I was a young executive, when I was in college, I was always really shy, and I never thought I had anything really to offer.
Hmm.
And I would sit in meetings.
Yeah.
In my first three jobs, I remember in my first three jobs I had in the corporate world, I saw my boss subsequent to me leaving the firm, and they always told me in as many words, Rob, you were a really smart guy. You were very perspicacious. You had a great, had a lot of good ideas, great insight, but you should have spoken up more, man.
Huh.
You always sat there in meetings afraid to say something. So if I had to do one more thing, it would have been to speak up in a meeting and confront my boss and
Oh,
communicate more assertively. That's the one thing I didn't do that I think hurt me. But I
okay.
learned. I probably
Awesome.
talk too much now. Yeah.
Not at all. I such enjoy talking with you, Rob. Beautiful, beautiful. I so appreciate your time and dedication to this call. And please, Rob, let people know where can they find you, and do you want to talk about your new November
Sure. So people can find me on my website, www.mrfairfax.com, mrfairfax.com. But I'm not a gigolo, I assure you. It's not that kind of Mr. Fairfax. It's a legitimate executive search firm specializing in insurance recruiting.
for sure.
So,
Easy to remember though.
and then my email is rhoughton at mrfairfax.com. And it's rhoughton at mrfairfax.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I do podcasting that's published every Tuesday. I do a blog that's published every Friday. We have a YouTube show called Million Dollar Career, which is every other Wednesday, I believe. And then we are launching a reality show, the first ever reality show on YouTube TV. On YouTube, it's called the Career Coaching Experience, and I'm going to be actually career coaching an individual. Her name is Daniela Ronaldo from New York City. We've already shot the first 2 episodes, but it's going to launch officially on YouTube, I think November 22nd. And that's a very exciting project because it's going to be reality. It's going to be unrehearsed. It's going to be very emotional.
Yeah.
Daniela is a really talented individual. She studied singing at Juilliard as in addition to a lot of other things. So I'm
Wow.
really excited about that, and we'll see how it goes. I'm all about experiencing new things because you never know where it's going to lead. I'm
Yeah.
having fun. Yeah.
So that's going to be pretty much live coaching on the spot, career coaching.
Yeah.
And you guys will be able to see Rob in his element. So we'll
Yeah.
definitely link all of Rob's contact information underneath the video for sure.
Yeah.
And one last question, Rob. For those that are needing help with, you're more of a experienced recruiter and career resource. So I know you do a lot of the career coaching for those sort of really anywhere in the early stages to the latter parts of their career. But do you also do coaching on folks that don't really know what career path to take? Just curious if that's the kind of coaching you also do or not.
Absolutely. That is exactly what the reality show is about.
Okay.
Daniela really doesn't know what she wants to do when she grows up and who she wants to be. So I'm going
Okay.
to take her down this, journey of self-discovery. And if anybody wants to talk about coaching, I'll just put this out there. If there's anybody out there listening to this that needs someone to talk to,
Yeah.
they can call me 703-395-3466. I won't charge you a nickel. If you just need somebody to talk to, just call me. I'll be happy to talk to you.
I love that, Rob. Thank you so much. It was so awesome to catch up with you.
Yeah, great. Let's do it again.
Yeah, for sure. This is awesome.